Good morning and happy Thanksgiving. Today is actually Thanksgiving Day, at least at the time of when I'm shooting this segment, opening segment. Got a couple things to touch on before we get into what we're working on. You already know, because it is getting uploaded tonight, I will be uploading the Christmas display. The normal season's greeting Christmas display. We'll be filming it tonight and uploading it tonight. And like I said, by the time you see this video, you will already have known that. But I brought it up because with it done, we've got Halloween all the way put away. It's time to start building for the 2021 season. And we are getting things started. I've got most of my supplies for the first 5 or 6 projects already that will carry me through the winter. One of which, right there, pink foam. There's 112 sheets altogether. And I spent yesterday and part of the day before in milling it. I picked up 56 full sheets of foam. I cut them to length and I cut them to width. Each panel is 2 foot, so I have about 112, and I had a couple of extra pieces in the shop left over from last year, so about 114 pieces. And as normal, we are going to be doing some foam carving, making wall panels. But that won't be until end of December, first part of January sometime, before we get into dealing with that. So those will just be sitting there. Our first project of the year, and it's going to be a short project, easy project, probably only going to take me a couple of days. It's the power pole. This is what I use to run all the household current in the haunt, which is roughly, I've got it set up for 70 amps. I got 2 of the outlets run 20 amp. And the other 2 outlets run 15 amps. I could probably plug the whole haunt into 2 outlets on here. Probably we only use about 40 amps worth of electricity, if that. And that's including with the power station that does all the low voltage. But anyway, I originally made this back in 2002, for my produce stand that we did for a little over a decade. Powered a produce stand, and we even had it set up to power 2 RVs. After the produce stand closed and we got into doing the haunt full time, actually we started doing the haunt prior to the produce stand closing, we started using this in the haunt. I would put this out at the back of the haunt, stretch the rat tail in, and we'd hook it right directly up to the circuit breaker box, with each outlet having its own breaker. And it's worked good. Over the years, I've had to come through and rewrap. That's just electrical tape. And what I've done is I've bundled all 4 wires, each one from each of the outlets, and then I just wrap them, to keep, so I don't end up with a snarled mess. And as you can tell, there's wires showing and stuff. It needs to be rewrapped again. Thing is I've also had some problems over the years with the GFI outlets going out on me. So I just replaced them with whatever I had handy, which is regular household outlets. And also, I need to get them back to GFI. It's just time to revamp it. We're going to keep the pole. We're going to keep the conduit pipes that the wire runs in and the metal outlet boxes. But we're going to replace the wire and we're going to replace the outlets and get covers back on them. This is one of those things, every time we had a failure with an outlet or something, I put a temporary one in for the season, and then thinking, well, I'll get in the off season and get it fixed. I just never get it fixed. I never pay any attention to it once it gets put away. But with as messy as the wire is getting, it's time. So our first project is going to be rehabbing this. And I got to get in here and get it all torn apart, and then we'll go from there. Oh, it didn't take long. We got all the outlets out, and I got the wire off. And it's all sitting right here. This is going in the dump. Wanted to talk about what I originally used. Originally, I had two different types of Romex. Romex, if you go down looking for it at Home Depot, usually comes either with a white housing or a gray housing. And it's a 3-wire strand. You got your hot, your negative, and your ground in it. The gray is used for outdoor applications. The housing on it's a little thicker, and it's a different type of plastic, and it handles the weather a lot better. This stuff I've been using, I bought back in 2002. It's part of the original wiring. And rodents seem to hate it. They don't get into it as much. The white Romex is what I used originally for the other two outlets. And I did it that way back at the time because they were running a sale on both the Romexes. And all they had was a roll of gray and a roll of white left. So I just bought one white, one gray, and split it between the 4 outlets. Ended up with 450 foot long lengths back in the day. But during one of my maintenance episodes on here, and yes, I did maintenance every so often, I discovered, while this sits outdoors a lot, in fact, the only time it's ever been indoors is when I was either building it or maintaining it in here. Other than that, it sits outside on the other side of the wall there, out in the weather. But the mice had gotten in and shredded in spots the white Romex. And I didn't feel like wasting money on Romex. Romex can be a little expensive. So I went down and bought some extension cords with the gauge wiring that I needed, that I wanted. And all I did was snip off the ends and just used it for wiring. And I found I liked using this a lot better for this application than I did the Romex. The Romex is a very stiff wire. The nice thing is when you bend it into the shape you need, it stays there. To where this, you go to bend it, especially the other end, when you can see down there all the loose wires down there, that's the end of this. They just flop all over the place. But I like the idea of having them flexible. I always cuss doing the Romex when I'm tying it into the circuit breaker box, because it's so stiff. I'm afraid I'm going to hit something. With this, I can bend all the wires. I can just flip all the wires out of the way, connect the one I'm doing, and bring up the next one. So I like using this. With that in mind, when I was buying supplies, I bought 4 brand new extension cords. My idea was to just simply snip the ends off. And I should say these are my old extension cords, not my new ones. But, just snip the ends off of them. And then run them for wire like I did with the original blue ones. And I got to thinking, I have 4 cords, which is what I've got on the table. The fittings are shot on, like this one's missing a ground plug. I got another one, this one here, it's missing the other end, so I put one of those on. Each of them have problems with their fittings. So, what I decided to do is I keep the 4 brand new ones, just as they are, for use in the haunt. Right now, they're out in the Christmas display. And I go through and I just use these 4. The wire and stuff in them is still perfectly good. It's just the fittings. And for this project, I don't need the fittings. So I just snip the fittings off and I'm good to go. So this is what we're going to end up using. For right now, I need to get that out of the shop. And then I need to go through, snip the ends off of all the wire, and get them threaded in, get the outlets in. That's our next chore. Like I said, this is a quick project. Made some progress. I got 1 cord, snipped the ends off of them, and I've ran it to the pole and up the shaft to the box it needed. And I got the plug clipped off there. Now, the one problem with using extension cords is the wiring itself. The wiring inside is the braided copper wire on the inside. In other words, it's multiple wires added together. And when you go to attach them into a circuit breaker box or an outlet, even if you have them twisted so they're all one solid wire, they tend to flatten out. I don't like that. So I got my soldering iron out here with some solder, and I'm going through and doing what's called tinning. In other words, I'm putting some solder on the wires, and when the solder cools, that holds all the wires together. And I'll be able to put that on to my outlets. Now, as to the outlets, I bought 4 new outlets. All of them are a GFI outlet, ground fault interruption, you know, in case of moisture and whatever, because this is outside and for an outside event. My difference is I bought 2 of them that are 20 amp and 2 of them that are 15 amp. Now, the 20 amp ones, I've got 2 cords here that are both yellow, a bright yellow and a faded yellow. These 2 I will be getting, putting the 20 amps on. The green and the orange over there will be getting the 15 amps. And basically kind of color coding it. That way when I go to hook it up to the circuit breaker box, since I have 2 20 amp breakers and 2 15 amp breakers in there, I'll know the yellow cords go to the 20 amps and the green and the orange go to the 15 amp. So I'll make it real easy for color, you know, for hooking everything up the way I want it hooked up. But anyway, I got these tinned. Now I've got to go through and do a little bit better job on that one. That one's not tinned quite as good. The underside is always a hassle. Just got to flip the wire over and tin it. But once I get that tinned, I'm going to go ahead and hook up the outlet, get it sucked back in onto the bracket here for the box, pull the excess through, and I'll go ahead and finish this outlet all the way. I'll get the cover and everything on it, and then that one will be done. And then it's just a matter of moving over to the next one and doing the same thing. And I'll just go one box at a time, you know, make sure everything's done. And by the time I'm done, all my wiring will be coming out here. And then we can go on to the next stage. Progress made. We got the outlets done. All the outlets are in. And I did do one goof, and it's not really that much of a major goof. I got 3 white outlets, and I accidentally picked up a black outlet, which doesn't matter, really. I mean, they all do the same thing, just one's a different color than the others. And in this application, it doesn't matter. You know, like I have all 4 be different colors. They're still going to work the same. But this part of the power pole is done. Now I got to address that mess, which is all the wires that go up to all the outlets. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the old one. Basically, electrical tape, and I'll start up here where I zip tied all the wires together, and I'll simply just start wrapping the wires all the way up, all the way down to their ends. This part is a sit-down job. It's more monotonous than anything else, but it takes a while. You got 100 feet you got to do, and it's quite a bit of electrical tape in order to do it. But it bundles all the wires together so you don't end up with a snarled mess every time you want to use it. So I've got that to do yet. And then we got to work with the ends of the wires too when I get to that point. But I won't be working with that until I get it all bundled. Okay, guys, we're getting down toward the end of it. I've gone through and I've got 1 coat of electrical tape on the wire from the base all the way down to the tip, and it ended up taking 6 1/4 rolls of electrical tape just to do 1 coat. I still want to come back through, and I am going to put a second coat on. 1 coat holds the wires together, but as you start bending them and stuff, the electrical tape will stretch and break. So I like to put a second coat on there. It kind of beefs it up a little bit, helps it last a little bit longer. But before I do that, I'm going to address the end of it here. For my application, I am plugging this into not plugging, but connecting it into a circuit breaker box. So leaving the standard, plug on the end of the cord doesn't work. So I had to snip those off, and I've stripped back the housing on the wire. And what I'm going to end up doing is just like I did with the outlets, I'll get my solder out and I'll coat all the tips in solder. I'll firm them up so so they don't mushroom out and stuff when I put them into the circuit breaker box. Also, for storage, I left about a foot of wire bare. That way I have wire I can maneuver around inside the electrical box instead of having a huge mass. I can do it a little wire by wire. I'll zip tie these all together, and then down here on the ends where I'll have all my solder points at, I'll wrap that with electrical tape for storage. And then next season when we go to install the power pole, I just take that off, clip a couple of zip ties, and it's good to go. Now, as far as this application on the power pole, I'm using 4 outlets because that's what I require in my haunt, is 4 outlets. You can effectively do this with just 1 outlet if you wanted to. You know, and I think doing it just with 1 outlet would be kind of a waste. I mean, just run the extension cord out from wherever you're going to. But for like with me, I've got 4 different circuits I run off of this. So having 4 outlets makes sense. Now I could have just ran 4 extension cords down the driveway from the haunt into the shop and plugged them in. My problem is I've only got 2 breakers that have outlets on them. And I needed 4, you know, so doing that method wouldn't have worked. Plus you have the mess of 4 extension cords for a month running down the driveway that everyone's tripping over trying to get past and over and what have you. You know, and technically I still have 4 extension cords, but they're all bundled and sealed, so it's one wire, 1 mass running. So, you know, it makes work. I mean, it takes a little bit of work, but in the long run, it's better. Plus, this ends up being a GFI circuit as well, with GFIs in it. If I just ran a regular extension cord out from the haunt and plugged it in here in the shop, it wouldn't be GFI, because my outlets in here are not GFI. Probably should at some point upgrade to GFI, but they aren't GFI. You know, so this gives me a little bit more added protection out in the haunt as well. But for right now, I'm going to go through, get my wires tinned, you know, get the solder on them, get them bundled up and coated, and then this end will be done. And then I'm going to spend another, it took me about 4.5 hours to do this. I'll go ahead and put a second coat on. Oh, as far as length, we have 4 different wires, 4 different extension cords, 2 yellow, an orange, and a green. The green was my shortest one out of the lot, but we had some leftovers. So I just wrapped this up until I got down with the green and then called it quits and snipped off my excess. So this pigtail here is effectively 82 feet long. It's an 82-foot length. And from the back of my haunt into here, it's roughly 30 feet, 40 feet. You know, so I'll never use the full length on this. But I like having the extra length on it. Just in case down the road, you know, if I want to use it for something else, I have a little longer reach with it. And, you know, it makes it nice. But anyway, I'm going to say that's going to be all for this project. I am not going to do another segment where I have the, you know, my work done with these and a second coat on it. You know, it'd just be pointless. Make the vlog longer. And with all my rambling in this one, it's probably already long enough. I will say I'm enjoying the shorter vlog, you know, or a shorter project. This is effectively a 2-day project. Time I get done putting the second coat on the pigtail, it's going to be a 3-day project. And then we'll be on to the next one. The next couple of projects are probably going to be short, small projects before we get into anything major. My first major prop I want to do, I'm still waiting on parts. So until they get in, I can't start it. So I'm doing some of these small little projects. But stay tuned. Here in another week or two, we'll probably have another vlog up for you. Stay spooky. Stay toxic.